About the drones. Secretary Panetta, when he was still at the CIA, acknowledged openly on some television shows that the CIA ran drone strikes. You saw in your time the degree to which an effort was made to make these strikes very precise, reduce collateral damage, and from all accounts that we've heard, that has improved. At the same time, that takes it far closer to the kind of targeted assassinations that the CIA tried to walk away from in the 70s and 80s before the drone invention. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, as you were watching all this come together, whether or not you see the U.S. getting close to a line there on either moral or legal issues.
There's absolutely no way to say that there aren't tricky legal, moral, or law of war issues associated with strikes. I think both the Bush administration and the Obama administration, in my experience, took those issues extremely seriously and had countless debates about each one of those aspects. Again, the policy reasons you're doing this, the ethical reasons behind it, the legal justifications, and frankly, both administrations came out in about the same place, that striking individuals who pose an imminent threat to the United States, who are plotting attacks against the United States, is the right thing to do as a matter of the laws of war, is the right thing to do as a matter of policy to protect the American people, is the right thing to do morally and ethically. And I certainly stand by that judgment. I don't think that who does them, in a way, matters that much. Whether it's, as you said, Leon did seem to say, the CIA or JSOC. To me, frankly, in the end, it doesn't matter that much, which is why I would prefer not to get caught up on Title 10, Title 50 in Washington debates. I don't think it matters to the countries where we're conducting the strikes or the people we're killing if it was a Title 10 or Title 50. I think it's still the right thing to do. I'd like to avoid some of these legal debates that don't matter and have the real debates about why it does matter. And I think frankly, one of the drawbacks of having too many officials talk too openly about supposed drone strikes is that, to some extent, I think it cheapens the coin of real covert action. It makes people think, well, if that's covert action and everyone's talking about it, I guess we can talk about all this other covert action. And I think that's a really dangerous thing, because there are many things that the U.S. government does in intelligence collection and other covert action that really is sensitive and really needs to stay secret, or will undermine our U.S. national security interests. So to the extent that we talk about one covert action and we figure we can talk about it all, I think that is really destructive to what the core of covert action should be, which is U.S. officials not discussing its covert activity.
Mike, let me take you to the issue that Clark referred to when he said we wanted to discuss the future of terrorism in the post-Osama bin Laden period. But before we get to the broader issue, I'd like to have you tell us a little bit about your role, your cameo role toward the end of the planning for the OBL mission. From the reconstructs of the mission that have appeared, it sounds like you were called in to do a red team analysis about the quality of the intelligence that tall guy seen pacing around the courtyard in Abbottabad was in fact Osama bin Laden. And if I understand it right, you then told the president when this was all over, kind of 50-50, sir. So tell us...
definitive intelligence judgment.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that, what the purpose of the red team was, how you put it together, and how much evidence there was to assess.
Right. So as the case was developed to locate bin Laden, as it was discussed with NCTC and discussed with me, one of the things that I presented, and I think the administration hardly endorsed, was let's make sure we've learned lessons from previous tricky intelligence problems that we faced. And I had the advantage of having been involved in the WMD Commission that investigated intelligence on Iraqi weapons of mass destruction before the second invasion of Iraq. And one of the criticisms that the Commission concluded, one of the conclusions of the Commission was that, frankly, there wasn't enough independent analysis of some of the key pieces of that intelligence, whether it was mobile biological labs that Saddam supposedly had or chemical weapons. So what I suggested was, I thought that the intelligence that had been worked up, again, by CIA, NSA, and others was really fabulous. It was a great piece of intelligence work, both on collection and analysis. But I felt it was important that we basically take people who had had nothing to do with working up that case. They weren't tied to any operational outcome. They weren't tied to any of the organizations that were principally involved and were going to execute. But frankly, they knew a lot about terrorism. And let's give all those people, let's shut them in a room, let's give them all of the intelligence that was available to the people who were doing the work, and ask them to actually justify alternative hypotheses to why Osama bin Laden was not there. So don't tell me all the reasons why you think he's there. Come up with alternatives as to why all this intelligence proves that he is not there. Now, again, this is something that was not done, I think, effectively pre-Iraq War. So we pulled together a couple of fantastic officers who had been working on counterterrorism from NCTC for literally decades. We did the same from CIA because we thought it would be useful to see if the teams came out differently, but we put them together. And we locked them in a room for as long as they needed to come up with their conclusion. And frankly, their conclusions, I won't go into the details of what the alternative hypotheses were, but their conclusions, they had a range of probabilities, but their conclusion was about what the prior team had come out with. And that, I think, was important, both as a historical matter to make sure, even in these really critical issues, we do the job of intelligence right. But also, I think, in informing policymakers and giving them confidence, and I hope ultimately giving the president confidence that we were doing this right and we had examined all the possible alternatives to bin Laden being there.
One of the counterfactuals of history, supposing the raid had gone on and he hadn't been there, what do you think the effect would have been on the intelligence community? What would the effect have been on President Obama?
I wouldn't have been speaking here. That was a topic of significant conversation. I mean,
I would hope so.
Yeah. And ultimately, I want to give enormous credit to the agencies that did the work, and obviously, I mean, to the heroes who risked their lives and went in. And I mean this in the most apolitical, most professional, independent intelligence community way that I can. I also want to give incredible credit to the president, because this was not an easy call. And I think sometimes in building up all that the intelligence community did, we forget that there was a whole lot of uncertainty in this. This was not, pardon me, George, this was not a slam dunk. This was still a hard call, and there was real risk involved. And people very much realized that the team might show up and he might not be there. I think the intelligence community, it would have been a hit. As people like to say, there are only two things, operational success and intelligence failures. So this would have been, it would have been a blow to the intelligence community. And no matter how much we had tried to inform and talk about uncertainty, that wouldn't have really mattered. It would have been intelligence community failure. And that would have been rough. I think
Would have been a tough conversation with the Pakistanis, too.
Well,
and it wasn't easy as it turned out.
Exactly,
So,
and
yeah.
I think that's why we took the issue so seriously. The fact is, the conversations haven't been easy with the Pakistanis since. Imagine if he hadn't been there. We had some very hard conversations. So I think, obviously, for the president, I won't speculate on what the political repercussions would be, but I think everyone in the room who was talking to the president, advising the president, very much understood how critical this was, not just for the intelligence community and its integrity, but ultimately, really for the country.